Hello, everyone. Welcome to APH Virtual Excel Camp. This is day 4 of Career Camp, built for our 14 to 22-year-olds. We're so glad to have you with us. This is a day to pull out that IEP or the old IEP you had if you're already out of school and kind of think about what accommodations did you have? That's our topic for today. Welcome to APH Career Camp. This is day 4 of our virtual Excel camp this week, and I am going to turn it over to your instructors, Amber and Jen. Amber and Jen, it's all yours.
Awesome. Welcome back, everybody. We are so excited to be here for day 4 of Career Camp this week. Today, like Miss Leanne said, we are going to talk about your vision, your accommodations, and how to be your own advocate. So your instructors are myself, Jen Stelmach, and I am a TVI in Florida.
And I am Amber Happ, and I'm a TVI and O&M in North Carolina.
Welcome, guys. We're going to go over a quick review of our Zoom webinar rules. If you unmute, we can unmute you if you have been called on. We will go ahead and raise your hand if you have any questions, but please make sure you have a quiet background. If you have a question, just raise your digital hand and it'll just take us a couple clicks and we can release your mic. You must join with a name. We will rename you if you do not have a name listed, and then chats will only be open when we say so. Give us a yes or no. Did it help a little bit yesterday how we slowed down talking and not just reading out all of the chats? Did that help you screen reader people not have to, sorry, you people who are using a screen reader, did that help a little bit keeping down the noise clutter? Awesome. So we will try. I got a couple yeses. So even if that helped just a little bit for a couple people, we're going to try and stick to that today and make sure that we're not trying not to talk over it. It's really hard to not read it out loud, but we will definitely put in an effort to slow down some. Make sure real quick, everybody, you are changing your chat box to all panelists and attendees also. That way you can make sure everyone is seeing what you're sending out. All right, the quickest recap. Let's go ahead and name one term that we have covered so far this week that pertains to getting a job. Can anyone think of one of their vocabulary terms and put it in the chat? Awesome. We got a few answers. We've got resumes, interviews, education, and application. Interview. Perfect. So it seems like you guys are paying good attention. Seeing if we had a few more coming in. It looks like perfect. All right, guys. So today we're going to talk a little bit about stuff that you guys are probably a little more familiar with because we're going to talk about your IEPs that you guys currently have. Can you give me a Y in the chat if you brought a copy of your IEP or at least know most of your accommodations that are listed on your IEP, so we have an idea how many people we're talking about today? Only one person has their IEP? I bet some of y'all know your IEP accommodations and just aren't even thinking about it. I feel like Miss Robin's going to come on here and get some of you who are her kids because I put money that you guys know your IEP accommodations. All right, well, as we're talking about it, can anyone put in the, for us real quick, let's go over some of these terms and see what we know about them. Noah said he knows his accommodations, but okay, as long as you know what your accommodations is, that's really what we need today. Just kind of a general idea of what stuff you use on a daily basis for your accommodations. Can anyone tell me what an IEP is? What is that an acronym for? Brianna has her hand raised. I will release her permissions. There you go.
IEP means individual education plan.
Perfect. Yes, ma'am. All right, can anyone tell me what an advocate is? If you're not sure, this is the stuff we are going to talk about more today. I just wanted to kind of get an idea if anyone was ahead of the curve here. How about accommodations? Does anyone know what an accommodation is? Did you guys just eat lunch and are sleeping? Come on, guys. I know you guys know what an accommodation is. Go ahead and unmute, hon.
Yeah. So accommodations means like it's like special, it's like stuff on the side basically to like help you learn. So like, for example, to explain this a bit better, since I am a visual impaired student, like I need front row center, but that's only to help me to like see better. And so it just helps. The accommodations are basically just helpful tools to help you get through life. That's what I think of that as.
Awesome, that's exactly it. Alrighty, and then in the chat, Casey said it's a special rule or condition to help you be successful, and that is very true. You can have accommodations in class or even in a job setting. And that's what we're going to talk about today, is how the two overlap some and what things are appropriate for a job that might not be appropriate in the classroom and vice versa. All right. So what is an IEP? Brian already told us that IEP stands for an individual education plan. The IEP is a legal document to establish a plan, including a list of all the services, accommodations, and goals for the upcoming 365 days while you're in the public school system. While the IEP is really strong and super legal binding document when you're in the school system, it does not have any legal standing outside of school. When you go to a job, your IEP is no longer a document that really drives things. It can be a support document for you, but there is not a legal standing behind it. It's a really good point of reference for your needs when you're discussing accommodations with your job. So we're going to discuss how to actually use it and how it can be helpful to you. All right, so when you guys go to your IEP meetings, can I get either a show of hands or a Y in the chat box if you have attended your IEP meetings in the past? Nice, Brianna leads hers. Awesome, I got lots of yeses and that makes me so happy. You guys should all be at your IEP meetings. Who knows better than you what you need in the classroom? Who else is on your team? So your parents and guardians are attending your IEP meetings. Unless you are 18, then they may not have to, but in most cases, until you graduate high school, your parent will attend. Your teacher, yep, awesome. Your TVI and your O&M. Does anyone have any other people that they can think of that might be on their IEP team? Counselors. We got the answer, vice principal. That's a good one. That's your school system representative. That's a good one, Casey. A VR counselor. So your vocational rehab is going to be one of those ones that we actually will get to reuse, someone who's on your team when you're out of school. The school directors and principals. Yep. You guys, are you allowed to bring somebody from the community, like your Division of Blind Services counselor or your Lighthouse counselor or one of those community support people? Are you allowed to bring them to your IEP meetings? All right, so we got a few mixed answers on this. Yes, you guys are welcome to, you and your parent are welcome to invite anybody that you want to your IEP meeting to help represent you. So the school is not legally allowed to prohibit you from bringing anyone that you think would be helpful to your meeting. So any of those kind of any VR counselors, any outside services and therapies, any of that kind of stuff, they're all welcome as long as you and your parent invite them to this meeting. Once you are out of school, though, your team gets a little bit smaller, and that's why it's so important for you to be an advocate for yourself. Because while you are your own advocate, you also will still have your community resource supports, which a lot of the time will help you with getting career help accommodations in place. And then your new employer is on your team now. They have to sit down and help you figure out what the best accommodations are going to be to help you. While your team gets a lot smaller, we got to figure out ways to make up for that change and how you can really support yourself out in the environment now. Because once you're 18 and going to a job, it's going to be hard to have mom come in and be your advocate. It's got to be you or somebody else, maybe not just mom, but. All right, so how can we be our best advocate? So I'm actually gonna go back one, and can you guys tell me some ways you can advocate for yourselves? You can either type or raise your hands and we will unmute you. Either way is fine. Brianna M, I went ahead and released your mic. You're unmuted. I think we can hear you if you start talking. I don't think your mic is working, hon. It's not moving at all. But it does say you're unmuted. So I'm not sure if something's not connected. If you want to get it fixed, and then I can unmute you again in just a second, or you can type it in the chat box. Know what you need, what help you need. That is very, very specific. Yes. More specifically, what kind of help you need, how much help you need. Yep. What kind of help is going to be a big one? What things really help you? All right. So how can you be your best advocate? Your best things are to learn your needs, learn your accommodations, know the laws that are there to protect you, and speak up for yourself in a polite and respectful manner. So going in and demanding things at a job is probably not going to win over most people the best, but going in and say, excuse me, I've come up with this solution. I would really benefit from A, B, and C accommodation. You're going to get a lot more help when you're doing it in a very nice and polite way. Just asking specific, and also having your specific needs. If you have already done the brainstorming to tell them what your needs are, it's a lot, like, I feel like people can really resonate. This is why they need this, and this is how it's going to help them. So what is an accommodation? An accommodation is an adjustment to your job or work environment that makes it possible for an individual with a disability to perform their job. Accommodations may include specialized equipment, modifications to the work environment, or adjustments to work schedules or responsibilities. All right, so we talked about you guys knowing some of your IEP accommodations. Can you guys list some of the accommodations in our chat box, or you can raise your hand, that you are currently using right now? What stuff benefits you? All right, we're getting a few answers coming in. I'm going to give everyone a couple minutes just to type up what accommodations help them. So Anna Reshma uses voiceover. That's awesome. That's something we can probably overlap into a job for sure. Extended time, special seating, and extended time. Okay, Braille. Yep. Oh. White canes, cochlear implants, a Braille sense, a Perkins Braille writer, extended time and preferential seating. That's a really comprehensive list. That's a good, you do know what you're talking about, no? Yeah, that's awesome. All right, guys, so
I don't think anyone mentioned tactile maps or different objects that can help you with maybe images or OCRs. But you might have experience using those too for accommodations.
I have pages. A lot of our students do have pages and pages of accommodations. And that's sometimes the accommodations pages look really lengthy because some of the stuff can overlap out in the world. Well, you probably won't need extended time and preferential seating in a regular environment for the most part. If you're sitting in a meeting, you might need preferential seating, but you definitely would still need your cochlear, your white cane, and then your Braille sense would probably be really beneficial in a lot of work settings. And we're going to talk about which ones are good for work and which ones we may not use in just a second. A job modification is slightly different than a job accommodation, and a modification is a process designed to adjust the work conditions, alter the duties and functions, or reestablish job protocol as fitting for individuals with disabilities. So does anyone have any modifications that have been made to their school settings? Or their curriculum? Sometimes curriculums are modified for certain people. Does anyone have like a Braille class? They get pulled for a full class. Less math problems. That's a good one. So Darren gets pulled with his TVI for a full class in Braille. So there's a modification to his class schedule to allow him to take a different course that his sighted peers are probably not taking because they don't need Braille instruction. And Amber said the length of the school day. If anyone goes for a shortened school day, especially we have a lot of littler kids that go for shortened school days when they're first going to school, that's a modification to your general school day. Modifying the movie, so there's an audio description when a movie's played out in the classroom. Does anyone use that one? Oh, that one's great. So Casey said that he used to get pulled out of his computer literacy class so he could meet with his JAWS teacher and work on his AT skills. So while the two skills are both kind of computer based, he was getting the skills he needed while his classmates were getting the skills they needed. Modify the work office so a guide dog has space to rest would be one. Does anyone here have a guide dog they use? And Darren, that's really true. Some movies don't have audio description yet. It could be requested that the school try and play movies that have audio description for the most part, or giving an alternate assignment to if there's not an option for that movie, having somebody go research a movie that is audio described and accessible. I don't see anyone with a guide dog yet. Casey will be getting one, waiting to be matched. You're close. That's awesome. All right, so let's talk about some ways to be your own advocate. The first thing is you have to believe in yourself. You are the expert on you. If a question is asked to you, is this big enough? Can you see this? What can we do different? it's going ahead and speaking up and saying this works best for me. And because I know when I was younger, I used to be really shy and didn't really want to talk to grownups, especially ones I didn't know very well. So if I was asked a question, I would kind of shy away from answering it a lot of the time. So Elizabeth has someone just tell her what's going on in the movie. So that's awesome if you've got a peer that could do that. But making sure that you're speaking up for you and being very clear and concise on what works best for you. The second thing is to know your rights. Do your research, be educated, and not just emotional. Knowing the laws that are in place, knowing what the ADA is. Does anyone know what the ADA stands for? Yeah, Darren got it. He said the Americans with Disabilities Act. And that is a federal law that was put into place to help protect rights of anyone who has a disability. So knowing what laws are in place to protect you can be really important. Deciding what you need and make sure that you're talking based on need and not just want. Trying to think of an example for that one. You may need a screen reader, but do you need this specific version, or do you want this specific screen reader? May not be the best example because a lot of the time you learn one and you're really
Maybe
good.
a note taker. I have some students that want a specific kind, but it might not be what they actually need. So certain technologies, I would definitely say, could be a need versus a want.
Does anyone else have something that they wanted at school that they may not have gotten, but they got something similar that is sufficient for their needs? All right, Miles, I released your mic.
Audio now on.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Well, last year, I was having trouble with geometry, so I wanted to, like 3D geometry, so I wanted them to label what each line was on the Braille graph, so like specifically length, height, all that stuff.
And now lowered alert.
And they wouldn't give it to me because they said that they couldn't accommodate me because they said that in high school I wouldn't be able to get that accommodation. So I found that pretty frustrating, but then the VI teacher decided that she'd help me in a different way.
That's awesome. So they found an accommodation to a different accommodation to help fit with your needs.
Yeah, because they said that on the PSAT it wouldn't be like that.
That's true. A lot of the time, by the time you get into high school, you have to, it may not always be the easiest accommodation to make your life the easiest, but sometimes they have to just go fitting based on what they're teaching too. Awesome. So the next thing is to express yourself clearly, be confident and concise. Sorry, I was trying to read someone's answer. They said that you wanted to leave class early to get to their next class, but after they'd been at the school for a while, they didn't need that anymore because they were so familiar with the campus. So that's awesome. Accommodations are not always concrete. You may need an accommodation for a certain amount of time, and then you may be able to slowly phase that accommodation out, which is awesome because that just means your independent skills are growing and you're able to really know your environment, and your O&M skills are probably pretty awesome if you're traveling with the crowd and everything around your school now. So these next two are kind of similar. Express yourself clearly, be a confident and concise advocate, and then be firm but respectful. So you can request an accommodation and you may really need that, and it's okay to be firm, but it's just important to make sure you're still being respectful when asking for it. Because that's for anyone sighted, not sighted, visually impaired, completely 20/20 vision. If you're asking for something from your employer, it's important to go in with a really good attitude and just a really good solution for them. Hey, so this, I really struggled with this today, but I thought maybe if you guys could help give me this, or if I could do X, Y, and Z, I might be more successful. Like, so that kind of thing is really good. Just being really specific. So let's talk about it at home, guys. How do you guys advocate in your home? Elizabeth still leaves class early because the hallways are crazy. That I understand. I always wanted to leave class early, and I did not have a visual impairment in high school because the halls were so busy. So I wholeheartedly understand that. Can anyone think of any accommodations or advocacy skills you're using in your home? I feel like you guys answer a lot more readily if I give you a yes/no question. Does anybody have auditory like alarms of any kind in their home versus one with or does anyone have a hearing impairment too that might have a flashing alarm in their home? Sometimes if you move into an apartment like I know in college when I moved into an apartment, there were accommodated fire alarms in my apartment because it was supposed to be inclusive to everybody. So not only did the fire alarm make the loud, terrible sound, it also had a flashing light, a really bright flashing light on it. So if someone was deaf or hard of hearing, they'd be able to see the light going off. Bumps on the dishwasher buttons, that's a great one. A vibrating alarm. How about the furniture in your house? Do you guys tend to keep the furniture kind of stationary? So we're not, since you guys, I'm sure, know your house is like the back of your hand at this point. Or do you ever get frustrated if things do get moved in your house? Audio descriptions are on when you guys watch movies. That's a great one. Don't move the furniture.
I'm curious if anyone likes to cook. How do you accommodate maybe cans in the pantry? Do you put something on it so that you can identify what's in there, or maybe even just snacks? Because a lot of packaging feels the exact same, and not every brand puts Braille on their packaging. I have seen a few cool ones, but it's not the norm.
Audio now unmute.
With me, I like to put all my cooking materials in their own spot, and they never change that spot.
That's great. It sounds like people in your house respect that you have a certain way to do things, and then that works for you. So that's a great strategy to have.
Yeah, everyone does besides the 2-year-old.
That makes sense.
2-year-olds are messy all the time, so. All right, how about when it comes to like your clothes and your dressers or stuff in your closet? Do you guys have to change anything up on that? Do you guys have some help with that? I have a feeling all of you wear clothes and all of you have some kind of routine for how you guys get dressed in the mornings. Y'all are high school or middle, probably late middle and early high school students. I know you guys are doing this.
And there's low tech ways to do it and high tech. It doesn't have to be super fancy. You may just have a way that works for you.
Kennedy face said, "Don't touch my clothes."
Does anyone sew Braille labels into their clothing so they know what color they are?
How about a phone app? Do any of you use the color identification phone apps? Miles, I released there.
I have a question about that. So, For like accommodations, I've been thinking about getting like one of those like pieces of technology, either an app on my phone. Well, actually, I have to start by getting a smartphone, but either an app on my phone or just a separate piece of technology that tells me what color my clothes are, because I always wear like mismatching socks and stuff by accident. And I'm wondering, with my accommodations, could I get it for less money, like off Amazon?
If you
Because
order
I'm
something
blind.
separate off Amazon, I don't believe that there's any way to get a discount from Amazon. But I know that if you talk to your TVI about it at your school, there's some things through the American Printing House for the Blind that may be able to help, that they would be able to order for low to no cost.
Okay, thank you.
And then a lot of the apps are free though. I know I just have it's not 100% spot on, but there's definitely one that I've downloaded just for playing with my students, so they can try it out and see how it works for them. And I don't think I would have paid for it, so I believe it's free. And if you have an iPad or anything like that, you don't have to specifically have a phone. If you have any kind of portable device like a tablet or an iPhone, most of the apps can go onto all those different devices too. So how do you guys think being a good advocate in your home could help you in your workplace? So my thinking is just the fact that you're practicing. The more practice you get on this kind of thing and speaking up for yourself, the more confident you're going to get at it. So I know sometimes it's easier just to kind of let things slide in all aspects of life, but sometimes it really is good practice to go ahead and speak up for yourself and say, hey, I really want to try that myself. Or instead of taking this from me, could you show me how to do this? And I have a feeling a lot of you guys do that a lot of the time and just are not getting it into the chats, because you guys seem like you're very intuitive and on the ball.
And if you live in a dorm, maybe at a residential school, I bet you have experience with this if you have a roommate. Sometimes it's not the easiest living with other people and you have to speak up for yourself. I got lots of practice with this in college and really all throughout my adult years, but sometimes you have to have conversations with people that you don't want to have, but it's all part of being a good advocate and speaking up for yourself. And again, like Jen's been saying, being respectful, but also knowing what works best for you and kind of just being able to explain yourself well.
And in accommodation, Elizabeth says she rolls her clothes up into outfits. So that's a great idea. I do that when I'm packing, so I don't overwear things or end up with mismatched clothing at the end of the week. But so I'm guessing she probably puts shorts, shirt, whatever, all rolled up together. So then she knows that she can just grab a roll and she will match. I love that idea. Tell people that I'll tell you if you need help. That's a great one. That way you're not just telling them, no, don't do that. You're saying, I'll let you know when I do need help. And that's a nice, respectful way to do it. So I found this great website that will help you guys when you are starting your careers and starting your working journeys. And it's called Ask Jan, and Jan stands for the Job Accommodation Network. So it's a U.S. Department of Labor branch, and it's their Office of Disability Employment. So this service will help. The Jan consultants have been providing job accommodation information to employers since 1983. So this is a really good resource that you guys can share with your new employers, or you can share with your peers so they can look up and see what are appropriate accommodations. It also has a really nice guide to reasonable accommodations under the ADA. So it's a list of what accommodations are reasonable versus what ones are not covered under the laws. So this is one good place that you guys could go to really do that research that we've been talking about and get yourself knowledgeable about the laws and about how they will help support you. So these next ones, I want you guys to write A for appropriate or N for not appropriate. And we're going to talk about why each of these accommodations is either appropriate or not. The first one says a Braille display connected to the company's computer. Do you guys think that is an appropriate accommodation to ask for or not appropriate accommodation? I love seeing unanimous answers. We got all appropriate on that one, and that is true. It is an appropriate accommodation to ask your company to attach a Braille display. How about requesting transportation to and from work due to your visual impairment impeding your ability to drive to work? Do you think that's an appropriate accommodation or a not appropriate accommodation?
Looks like some mixed N's and A's.
And I'm not sure. Good, I'm glad we're talking about this. Your employer's responsibilities start at the time you arrive at your job. So it is your responsibility yourself to go find your ride to and from work. It is not your employer's responsibility for that. So that is not an appropriate accommodation to request. This says the employer is only responsible for accommodations within the workplace and not outside. So it is your responsibility to find travel to work, whether it be a bus or an Uber or walking, depending where you live and how close your work is. All right, how about this next one? Is it appropriate or not appropriate to request an enlarged monitor at work for easier access when using your screen magnification? So A for appropriate and N for not appropriate. Perfect, all A's. Yes, that is appropriate. You can absolutely request an enlarged monitor. Do a few more of those. How about an alternate office chair because the one provided is uncomfortable? That is correct, you guys. It is not appropriate, but this one could be based on wording. If you have some kind of physical impairment that requires you to have a specific office chair or like a specific support system built into a chair, then going in and requesting a different office chair may be appropriate, but going in to tell your employer it's just uncomfortable would not give them a justifiable reason to get you a chair. It's going to definitely be how you word that. If you can get a note from your doctor just saying that you have a hip issue or a back problem or something along those lines that required you to have an ergonomic chair, then that might be an appropriate accommodation. So it says if the chair is causing a physical barrier to a known disability, the wording may just need to be explained differently. All right, so how about a screen reader software installed on the company's computer or device? Is that appropriate or not appropriate? Got a couple appropriates. So I want to ask, that is definitely an appropriate accommodation. If you are working in a quiet office space though, do you think you should have your screen reader talking out loud, or do you need to have a set of headphones that you wear when using it? Awesome. Yes, you definitely would want to have a set of headphones. Because not everything that you are doing on like that is playing through your computer does everyone in your office need to know. You may be reading an email that is not everybody's business, but it's also, you don't want to disrupt the people in your office. So that is definitely an appropriate accommodation though. So requesting a chair while cashiering due to a physical impairment of your legs. Do you think that is appropriate or not appropriate? Yes, that is definitely an appropriate accommodation. And the last one, a talking calculator with an earbud for mathematical calculations. Appropriate or not appropriate? Yep, that one is definitely appropriate. Nice job, y'all. So let's talk about some of the accommodations that you guys have on your IEPs and whether you guys think that those would be useful and if they would be appropriate. The first one I'm thinking of, how about extended time? If an employer gives you an assignment and says, I really need this by next Tuesday, do you think extended time is going to usually be an appropriate accommodation for an employer? Awesome. Yep, I got a bunch of no's, so that's perfect. As long as it's a reasonable amount of time, which is for anybody, as long as the employer gives you a reasonable amount of time to get it done, the deadlines are definitely going to be deadlines. See what other, how about special lighting? Do you guys think special lighting would be an appropriate accommodation for an employer? For those of you with some site that may require a desk lamp or something like that? One appropriate? Yes, a desk lamp definitely could be an appropriate accommodation. How about a magnifier? Do you think a magnifier in a work environment would be an appropriate accommodation? So I got one yes and one no. Why would you guys think that might not be an appropriate accommodation? I'm just curious to. Is there some, oh, let me, there you go.
Audio now unmute.
A magnifier, a person who needs a magnifier, I mean, a magnifier would make sense for a school environment, but really, someone needs to they need to accept real life. They need to accept that a magnifier isn't going to be available everywhere, and they should use a screen reader or a computer magnifier, which doesn't even cost anything.
Well, I'm gonna respectfully disagree on that one. As long as they are carrying around a pocket-sized magnifier with them, if they're trying to read something really quickly, like say they needed to read a price tag on something, or to just verify the date on something, it may be easy to pull out that handheld magnifier and just glance real quick. It's not something that's very cumbersome. It's not something that's gonna like be distracting or take up room. It doesn't really make noise. So there may be a few situations that a magnifier might not work well, but for the most part, I think that could probably be an appropriate one.
I've got one. What about if you're a cashier and people are handing you money and you are assigned somebody to identify the money for you? You ask for somebody to tell you what the money is. Is that appropriate or not appropriate? Any thoughts? Got some no's, a yes and no, it depends. So it's not appropriate to have somebody with you to identify the money because there are so many ways that you can identify money independently. There are talking money identifiers, there's sorters for coins, and you can tell what sizes of coins they are based off of just feeling them. So using an electronic aid in that situation would probably be quicker, and it would make you independent, so you wouldn't need another person there.
How about an alternate seat? I know a lot of my students have listed on their IEP that they need an alternate seat in the classroom. Can you think of any situations that might be either appropriate or not appropriate in a work environment? In a meeting, yeah, I definitely can see where having an alternate seat in a meeting could be a very appropriate accommodation. Not enough light. That's a great one. So if there was not enough light, you might request a seat over near a window or away from a window, depending what your vision. And I was kind of thinking if you were a cashier, while it's not really requesting an alternate seat, requesting the same seat every day. So you know where in the store you exactly are, where, like, which way people are walking from, where the doors are exactly from you. Just requesting to be in the same spot, because I know a lot of the time, like if you walk into a Publix, the cashiers are going to move around to different spots every day. And that seems like a very easy and appropriate accommodation for an employer to make, to have you just in the same cash register every day.
And speaking of locations, what about if you're at your place of work and you request an accessible map for fire exits? Would that be appropriate or not appropriate? Kennedy and Casey both said A. No, it most certainly A. Yes, that is totally appropriate. You need to be safe and know where those fire exits are in the case of an emergency, and to be able to get to where you need to go in that case. So requesting an accessible copy of those exits and where you need to be is definitely appropriate.
How about asking them for an O&M to come in to help you train on your facility, especially like if you're working in a big warehouse or something like that? I got a couple appropriate. I definitely think that that could be considered appropriate. You could also come in with solutions when requesting that to say, we have the Division of Blind Services here in our community. Would it be okay if I reached out to them to see if an O&M could come help, rather than just dropping it on the responsibility of the employer? So that's just one of those times you could go in with a plan to help.
Definitely. What about requesting Braille copies of everything, even though you have access to a Braille device? As a like a refreshable Braille device, would that be appropriate or not appropriate? Oh, wow, lots of responses, lots of ends. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of you probably prefer to have it on a refreshable Braille device. Then you can get things at the same time as your coworkers. If something's going out in just an email and it's accessible, then you have access to it. And it looks like Miles says, why not a computer with NVDA, which is a free screen reader? Yeah, if you've got that, definitely. Most companies do have computers, yeah, and most companies probably don't have embossers. I don't think I've ever been anywhere that has a Braille embosser, but I'm sure there are some out there, but more appropriate would be to have an accessible document on the computer. Asking for an accessible document is appropriate electronically, so definitely.
And Miles, I love how you're thinking outside the box, thinking of ways that are free, thinking of ways that are easy to access and easy for your employer. They're not having to recreate the wheel. They can take the document that they're printing or sending out to everyone else, just make it accessible and send it right over to you. So there may be one extra step, but it's not a whole like calling out to a Braille company, because someone in your office is probably not going to know how to do Braille. So they would have to send that off to someone who can Braille it for you, and then have to wait for it to come back. So if you guys can come up with those kind of solutions for what works best for you, whether you request it on a Word document or say, I would really like an accessible PDF, that kind of thing. And you may have to teach them how to do it. If people are willing to learn, that may be part of being your own advocate, is really just showing them this is how you do it and this is how it works best for me. If you could do it this way, I would appreciate it.
And I don't know if any of you have been to like in-services, maybe at the beginning of the school year with new teachers, and you have to teach them. Maybe you have to teach them sighted guide every year, or teach them your preferred methods of receiving documents, like Jen was saying. How do you make something accessible? If you haven't done that, I'm sure your TVI has, or your O&M. So if you're not sure, maybe ask them tips that they give your teachers, because you will need to know those things when you get a job, because you will be your own advocate, and you need to know how to clearly express yourself and let other people know how to best help you, and how so you can succeed in your job.
Tell us why or if you guys know how to make a document accessible. If you could explain that to someone else, yes or no? Kind of. I like the honesty there. That's something good to let your TVI and O&M know that you're not really sure about, because that could definitely be a lesson they could go over with you before you're out of school. So you were really caught up on that and knew how to explain it to somebody. How about reacting to someone calling it a stick instead of a cane? Are we just going to ignore the person in our new job? Are we going to correct them? Or are we going to set up a little flyer maybe that we could hand out to explain some of the differences they may see with these accommodations? Or if anyone has any other ideas. Two or three. Tell them politely, yeah. Let's wait to see if I got any more responses. It's just not something people see a lot. So really coming in and politely explaining it, or even if you can find a link to a YouTube video, people are so about watching things on their phones and that kind of stuff now, that you could just send and be like, hey, check this out. This is why it's not a cane, it's a stick, or it's not a stick, it's a cane. Because even my fiance, who's been around blind people for 5 years now, you would think he would have it ingrained in his head. We'll still, and he's well aware it's a cane, but we'll still occasionally be like, oh yeah, the stick. And then he looks at me and sees the face I'm giving him and does very quickly correct him. But people just slip up and sometimes need that extra encouragement to fix their mistakes. Sending an email to your employer is a great idea. And then the employer can definitely share it.
And it's important to remember that even though all of you guys are around people that have visual impairments probably every day, and especially if you go to a residential school for the blind and visually impaired, you know the lingo and certain phrases that you use that may just come off without thinking, like NVDA or JAWS or ZoomText. Like if you say those to people that have no experience with other people that have visual impairments, they're gonna give you a blank stare and have no clue what you're talking about. So important to remember that they may have never met anybody with a visual impairment and they're adjusting to the new phrases and terms. So you also may just need to be patient and be polite and just remind them when things come up, because people make mistakes every day. I make mistakes all the time, and it will happen.
All right, guys, as we're kind of running low on time here, we got about 5 minutes left. Can you guys tell us one thing that you learned today and one thing that you may use later? Go ahead and type it out in the chat for us. Awesome, y'all. So I have one that says making a list that you could use for when advocating for yourself, and that's so awesome. And what you can do instead of recreating the wheel is see if you can get a copy of your IEP accommodations page. That way you can pull from there to see the ones that really help you on a day-to-day basis. And then Noah said the difference between appropriate and inappropriate accommodations in the workplace. And really that we just kind of touched on a brief overview of those. There are tons of different things you guys can be using when you start getting jobs, and every accommodation is going to be job specific too. While you may need a screen reader at this job because you're on your computer a lot, you may only need a Braille display at this job because you're reading a lot of things and that kind of thing. You may not use the same exact accommodations everywhere you go. And being careful to phrase accommodations so people understand what you need and why you need it. That I love that that's what you took from this, because that is so important. It's not just something you want, it's something you need to be successful, and then wording it so that you can explain how it helps you. And no one will come to work with you. You have to be independent and open about your accommodations. Yes, being very open is super important. All right, guys. So tomorrow we're going to be talking about problem solving early in your career, what things may go wrong, because every day is not going to go smoothly. It doesn't. When you've been doing your job for 10 years, it still doesn't go smoothly every day. You may wake up late, you may run into traffic, you may have a sick kid. Things just do come up, and we're just going to talk about ways to problem solve on the job and the do's and don'ts of different situations. And also be ready, because we've learned so much information this week. So we're going to wrap up our camp week with some career camp Jeopardy at the end of the week, or the end of the day tomorrow. So for your extension activity, you're going to use your computer with your JAWS or ZoomText and research 2 or 3 community or state resources in your area to help you with employment and job support. Make a list of these resources, including the eligibility requirements, the programs that are available, and some contact information for the people you need to get in touch with to get set up with these programs. Some of these programs you can join as early as 13, 14, and 15. So finding out what age you can jump into this and going ahead and becoming a client of theirs. And then list the organizations they are affiliated with for your volunteer opportunities. So some of these programs might have connections with your local humane society, with a local other program that you can get volunteer hours or jobs through. So just knowing and trying to sign up for ones that you enjoy that would fit your lifestyle. All right, guys, that's it for today on that.
Well, thank you so much. We've learned lots again. Thank you all for participating. And thank you, Amber and Jen, for another busy-filled hour. Thank you to my closed captionist for hopping in at last minute. We appreciate you. I hope to see you all tomorrow. be looking out for your extension activity in your emails. Bye all.
Bye, everybody.